Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. Today, I have an interview with the amazing Monica Cox. We had a wonderful conversation last week all about the subconscious mind and the power of the subconscious mind. And I wanted to share, before you guys get into that conversation, two things with you. One, first off, it was really interesting for me because I'm on my own personal wellness journey and always will be. I think wellness is something that you kind of just have to accept as, always a journey. And so I really dove back into the subconscious mind work and the mindset work that I had kind of put on the back burner over the last few months while I focused more on my physical health. And it was so fascinating because I find when I am doing my own personal development, my brain, which is, unique and makes me who I am, but is always, always, always thinking, how can I take this back to my clients? How does this relate to my niche? How does this impact the fertility journey? So I'm digesting all this information for how does this impact me? What do I need to do to modify my thoughts and my actions and way of thinking to improve my life, but also how can I use this information to help my clients? And then I sit down with Monica and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just echoing and mirroring so many things back to me that my mentor is saying to me, which I just found so hilarious because when I'm sitting there, I'm going, how do I bring this back to the fertility space? And Monica's doing it. She's taking this concept of how our thoughts and beliefs and how our subconscious mind impacts our fertility journey, that it's not just this physical journey, which you guys have definitely heard me say before, that there's more to it, right? It's not just about the physical. We have to take the mental, emotional aspect into it. And Monica really takes it one step further with her clients and doesn't just talk about, mental health, but actually dissecting the power of your subconscious mind. So the second thing I want to say before you dive into this interview is if you are about to turn this off because you're like, you know what? That's just not really my thing. That's a little too woo-woo for me. I really do encourage you to stick around and hear her out and listen, because the craziest and coolest part about this work, about learning about the subconscious mind, is that it's not this fluffy, ether cloud out in the universe that you just have to think in your mind and believe and it's there. It's physics, right? It's the laws of the universe are physics. It's a tangible scientific aspect of our world. And if you are a little skeptical, as I was getting into this work, it really does help to find a mentor or someone to learn from that has that approach to explaining it. And that's why I love my personal development mentor, is she does a really good job at bringing in the science aspect to a concept that can feel very out there, very woo-woo, right? So I think Monica does a really great job of kind of blending those two ideas together, which I'm sure she does beautifully for her clients. And at the end of our conversation, she actually has a really generous offer for our podcast listeners. So I highly encourage you to listen right through till the end. I'll make sure everything you need to get in touch with Monica is in the show notes. And I will see you guys in the next episode. The fertility journey can be stressful, so finding pockets of joy and a sense of calm through your day is an important part of regulating your nervous system. Cozy Earth believes your 5 to 9 should consist of relaxation, rejuvenation, unwinding, and embracing a sense of calm, which is key to your fertility success. Give yourself the gift of luxury comfort right in your own home with their amazingly soft bamboo sheets. I just washed mine and put them back on my bed, and they somehow got softer. I'm actually shocked. They also have amazing pajamas, bath towels, and you can try them risk-free with their 100-night sleep trial. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth, so you can enjoy 40% off your purchase at cozyearth.com with the code FCM, and let them know that you listen to the Fertility Confidence Podcast on your post-purchase survey. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast, and thank you to Monica for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
let's start with you sharing just a little bit about yourself and how you got into working in the fertility space.
Yeah, well, it's a personal journey, like a lot of us have getting into this space. It is the overwhelm of trying to figure out what is wrong with your fertility when you feel like you're doing everything right, when the doctors might not be listening or not hearing your true complaints, right? They're just looking at your ovaries and saying, well, everything looks fine. And so you start going down the rabbit hole of what can I do? Because you have this deep intuition that there is something that you can do, that you can really improve your situation. And especially now, my journey was over 15 years ago. There wasn't these amazing podcasts like yours out there. And it really pushed me I realized that fertility wasn't separate. It was a whole body system. And going down that rabbit hole, just like everyone here feels, you start going through the struggles of being perfect, of doing everything right, showing up for yourself consistently, and encountering failed IVFs and encountering miscarriages, and just, looping in your head, what more do I have to do to see the success that I want? And so I went down that path for a very, very long time. And there was a pivotal moment in my journey after my first failed IVF. I was only 30. I was sat in the WTF room, which I know everyone knows what that means in here. And the doctor said, well, that's it. You have low egg quality confirmed by this IVF. Your husband's sperm is fine, and there's nothing you can do. And I remember sitting in that room, and what I would like to call my guides now, at the time, I didn't really, I thought they were just voices in my head, like literally screaming at me, like, that is BS. Don't believe him. You're going to figure it out. Because at that stage of my journey, I was not scientific. I like, give me a snowboard, give me paints. And I was like, okay, well, let's just, go on a different path. And their advice was just try IVF again. And it just seemed crazy because even though we lived in the United Kingdom and there's a national healthcare service, we didn't qualify for free IVF. So we paid for it ourselves. And, anyone listening to this right now knows the financial toll that a fertility issue journey can have on you, on top of the mental, emotional, and physical toll. So we didn't jump into it, and we just got really lucky. A friend said, change your diet. And we just looked at him like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't have a bad diet. We weren't overweight. We didn't have any diagnosable issues that would have justified a diet change. And I thought to myself, well, why not? I mean, let's just go for it and try it. And that was the start of going down the rabbit hole. And I lived a really perfect life for a year. I mean, I saw all my health improvements with my digestion and my moods and my brain fog completely disappear, but I still couldn't get pregnant. At that point, it was almost 5 years, and I still had never seen a positive pregnancy test. So my intuition pushed me. It was like, hey, there's something going on here. And I don't even remember how I got it, but I picked up a book called Is Your Body Baby Friendly?
That's my favorite book.
Yep. And I read through that book, confused through most of it. It's highly scientific. It was not health and wellness. No. I know the newer version has Zeta West talking about autoimmune, but at the time there wasn't a link there.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any symptoms, as I was reading through the different various things, but my intuition was like, do immune testing, do it. And so we sought out a clinic, and at that time it was really controversial. It's still kind of controversial.
It still is, for sure. Yeah. But I can imagine that time period. Absolutely.
And we went in and they talked me out of it. I didn't follow my intuition. And that led to another failed IVF. I didn't even make it to day 28, but I decided to look at that as a success because we actually got 5 healthy embryos. And that was improvement for me.
Yeah, huge.
But I have to admit that I printed out a surrogacy form. I thought, well, what else do I have to do? Because I was literally perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my moment in it, crying on the couch and just letting it out. And I picked myself back up and said, let's demand the testing. I know they don't think it's us, but let me just know. It's my money anyways. let
Right?
me
Yeah.
let me spend my money. And there it was. Even after a year of being absolutely perfect, I still had high natural killer cells, which is an autoimmune issue. And because I was neck deep in bone broth and liver anyways, I continued, and I discovered that at the time I was highly intolerant to tomatoes, paprika, the nightshades.
Yeah.
And once I cut those out of my diet, 3 weeks later, my last kind of normal and common health issue went away. That was it. We continued with immune suppressing drugs because we were still in the medical system. We had beautiful babies on ice. So, in my first frozen embryo transfer with immune suppressing drugs, I got pregnant. And that was, I mean, as anyone knows listening to this, was I did it, almost 6 years. Like, we proved that we could do this. But unfortunately, I had a miscarriage. So when I went in for the 7-week scan, there was no heartbeat. And as devastating as that was, we took 8 months to heal physically, financially, and emotionally. I really improved. I went a little bit deeper into healing the gut lining because I knew that was the direct link to my autoimmune issue. And we got success the next time around. That was our IVF baby. And during his pregnancy, I was just able to still be in the new lifestyle that I had created for myself because I saw how magical it was on so many different levels. But I was also gifted surrender.
Right.
The stress of trying to conceive, doing medical treatments. And so with that combination, I truly believed my gut massively healed during that time. And because we weren't able to try naturally because of the Zika virus and a few other things, we had 2 embryos left, and we knew we were going back for them. We went back for the last babies. I got pregnant again, but unfortunately, I miscarried the twins. And that one was a little bit harder, I have to admit. Even though we had a baby, in my mind at that stage, that was it. Like, the journey was done. I was not doing IVF again. This was 2015, so people still weren't using social media and podcasting like they do now. So there was no one out there to relate to like get that belief like my body could do it naturally. So I was like, okay, that's it. I'm internally grateful for this beautiful boy that I have. And we just started living life. And 2 months later, I was pregnant naturally. And that was the biggest shock, obviously. And I have to admit as well that I was angry. I was really angry the first 4 months of that pregnancy because it had been 8 years of a lot of struggle, a lot of heartache, a lot of money, a lot of time. And not that it was easy. I'm not going to say that changing your health and your lifestyle is easy, but it was doable. And I didn't have to spend years in a certain place beginning with the letter H that and that was it. I knew that this message had to be out there. And that's when I started finding fertility, becoming a coach, I had, when you go down this rabbit hole, you get qualified in everything
Right.
that you discover, right?
Yeah.
Most people listening to this are type A and they just
Right.
want to consume knowledge. And so that was how I got here today. But I know the struggle is real. And I don't know if you're seeing in your practice now, there's so much information out there and it is why, it ranges,
Mm-hmm.
but it's accessible. And so the women that are coming to me now are like, they have the knowledge. And I'm kind of sitting there intimidated, like, I think you know more than I do at this stage. But it's still not, quote unquote, working. They're
Right.
not seeing the success they want. And it's that missing piece of coherence, alignment, surrender, taking all that knowledge and actually applying it to their life. And that's the scariest bit for them because you no longer feel in control.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. And I think so many women listening are going to be able to relate to your journey and even the length of your journey as well. And now it's brought you to this place of being able to reflect back and use that in your teaching, which is amazing. And you said something in there about us as women trying to get pregnant, trying to live this perfect life, and you felt you were living this perfect life and it still wasn't working. And it's funny because we decided inside Fertility Confidence Method, our motto for 2025 was going to be, you don't need to be perfect to get pregnant. And this is where I'm trying to bring all of our teaching and education back to, is like, yes, there is lots of information out there. Yes, I acknowledge that I am contributing to the lots of information out there. I see the irony in that. And I want you to remember that you don't need to be perfect to get pregnant. And there's still this, I love that we have social media and podcasts, and I love that we're able to share stories so that women don't feel alone. But it comes with this underlying con of having accessibility to doing things that aren't appropriate for your body, or comparison syndrome, feeling like you're not doing enough because someone else is doing more. And so therefore you have a problem. And now we have a different sort of swirl happening based on what you're seeing other people doing. And we have to kind of separate, stay in the community because we want you to have that community, but be able to mentally work on that control, surrender aspect and separate your journey from the collective as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this journey, if you choose to make it, is a coming home to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting in alignment with true health and true wisdom because your fertility is innate. I mean, we're not talking about that in this enough. It's hardwired. It's just like breathing. It's just like walking. You don't have to think about your fertility, but the way that society has set it up, especially around age, and this belief that you can't improve certain areas of your body, we get caught in micromanaging our ovaries.
Yeah.
And as you know, and as your listeners know, the root cause is where it is. Most people dealing with fertility issues have a cellular health issue. They don't have a fertility issue unless it's structural or maybe something genetic that, functional medicine at this moment cannot change.
Mm-hmm.
And once we get that realization that I don't have to micromanage my fertility, I need to come back to myself. I need to fix my health, right? Like, it's a physical pregnancy is, yes, an energetic and emotional thing, but it's a very physical thing too. We're growing the avatar or the body that the soul is coming into. And when you realize that from the moment of egg meets sperm, that starts, you can just relax into, okay, I feel good on the diet that I'm doing. Yeah, it's not the egg quality diet or the AIP diet, but it feels good to me. I feel great on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can leave that alone. I've ditched the 20 supplements. I'm on the ones that I know are working for my body, and I'm going to bring more joy into my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be happy. I'm going to cultivate this world that my baby is watching and actually wants to join. And I have a physical vessel that can, grow that other human being.
Mm-hmm.
And once we realize that in our journey, everything changes.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you can really get there is with radical responsibility,
Right.
is really looking at your thoughts, at your emotions, at your energy in the mundane. Not when you're working with a coach, not when you're at your acupuncturist or on your yoga mat. Those are all essential. Breath work, those are all great. But how do you feel when you're driving in the car and someone,
Yeah.
does something to you? Or how are you feeling doing the dishes? What is your inner monologue? And when you can get real with yourself in a kind and a compassionate way, it's not blame, it's not judgment, it's just realness, then you can go, wow, look at how I'm speaking about myself. Because what a lot of people don't realize is all the subconscious drives your consciousness.
Right.
And if you don't get in tune with that, and if you don't get radically honest and find where you can shift your energy and shift your emotions in a positive way, then it's going to be a lot harder to go through this journey. And I'm not saying you can't get pregnant, right? Because pregnancy is not a sign of health and it's not perfection.
Yeah.
We know that from our drunk cousin. We
Right.
know that from the beautiful, God bless her soul, the crackhead on the side of the street. Like, we know that.
Yeah.
And we get so frustrated with ourselves that, hey, I'm doing everything perfectly, but they're not, and they get the baby. Well,
Yeah.
here's the raw truth, right? Your health and potentially your baby's health, mentally, emotionally, and physically, are going to be jeopardized. You're at higher risks for, issues during pregnancy, issues during birth, issues during postpartum. And if you can look at this journey of like, wow, I've been given time to clean up what I need to clean up, and I'm going to do that because of the epigenetics, this is all science, this isn't
Mhm.
woo. I'm going to do that for my baby, and I'm going to do that for myself. And hand on heart, the more you can do that before baby comes, even before the pregnancy, you are going to have such a more joyous time during it, because the anxiety and the stress of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum and beyond, I felt for me like quadrupled from infertility.
Yeah. Yeah. The journey's
And
not done
yeah.
when you get your positive, unfortunately.
Yes.
Right? It's
Mhm.
now having this next layer of almost trying to heal the trauma that you just went through while now going through this new, very anxiety provoking experience. Because again, kind of to bring it back to control, if you're in the infertility space, you also know the miscarriage risk statistics. So now we have this, we did this, but it multiplies the fear by
Yeah,
10x, right? And now we're
absolutely.
clinging to, well, what can I do to I was just in my office hours for my program before we hopped in this recording, and one of our clients, amazingly positive pregnancy test this morning, awesome. Her very first question was, okay, what do I do with my supplements? And her second question was, okay, and also, like, what else can I do to make sure that this sticks around? Like, that's immediate, which valid, right? Like, of
Mhm.
course that's where your brain goes. And I always have to come back around to this conversation of like, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
You're already doing it. So now it really does become about what we're believing and saying and speaking out loud up here, and really working on that belief and that mindset piece of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I always say to my clients, it's written in the stars physically. There's very little you can do to influence what happens after the positive pregnancy test within those first 12 weeks, right? You have laid the groundwork as much as you can. And I know, because I didn't really get into the subconscious and the energetic until motherhood pushed me into that. But I had mindset, pretty well down. And with my natural pregnancy, I have a heart-shaped uterus, and he sat on one side of it. And at 9 weeks, right after a 9-week scan, I had a massive bleed. And the right side of my uterus, shed its lining. And I was so grateful for the little knowledge I had around mindset and about the physical body. And actually, my mother-in-law is an ex-midwife, and she just says that's not how it works. Like your
Right.
baby is fine. But for that 24-hour period before I could get another scan, luckily the woman let me come back. It was really hard to just calm my stress levels and just have faith that that baby was still there, because at that time too, I had never been pregnant without a truckload of immune suppressing drugs. So in my mind, I was like, well, that was it. My body couldn't do it anymore. So the way that most people show up to a fertility journey is the way they were patterning before. Okay, so it contributed to fertility issues in the first place for most of us. The high type A, the stress, the over-controlling, the overachieving, the seeking the worth out of doing. And so you just brought that energy into a trying to conceive journey. For the most part, you can't type A your way out of fertility issues because of that contrast with the cortisol and the stress levels, the endocrine system, all of that. So when you're in the thick of it, this is one of the toughest lessons to do, because it's probably the thing you want the most, more than you wanted your job or the college or anything you want, right? And it's the extreme opposite of what your nervous system is wired to do. And so your nervous system is the blueprint of your reality, not your consciousness, not what you know. Because if it was, you would have already had the success.
Right.
So when you are feeling like I am doing everything right, that's where the radical responsibility comes in. Okay, if I was doing everything right, then it would work.
Right.
So where can I look at myself where I'm have this death grip on this journey? Because remember, you can't want and have at the same time. Because if you have it, you don't want it.
Right.
So living in that energy and retraining that nervous system to ease, to relaxation, to you don't have to be perfect to have this. And the cool thing is that all the physical stuff and all that death grip already got you so much closer on a cellular health level. You've already massively improved yourself. So you don't have to overthink that part anymore. It's really sitting with yourself for 20 minutes. I've had a client who had she's like, what? She's like, no way. I was like, all right, let's try 5 minutes. Like no podcast, no book, no music, no distractions, just sitting with yourself. And that's why I teach intuition and discernment so much, is because when you are silent, when you are able to listen, you get your answers.
Right.
And you trust those answers, and you don't go and seek them and have those squirrel moments. We've all had those clients who are working with us. We find their root causes, we give them the plan, and they cannot sit still. So they go find another, functional medicine doctor that knows all about SIBO or, whatever the case is. And your heart breaks for them, because I'll never say, don't go get a second opinion or a third or fourth. Don't do whatever resonates with you, do it. But also check yourself of where are you coming from? Are you coming from scarcity, that you don't have enough information to achieve? Is your nervous system freaking out because what I've said to you, you don't feel like doing? And that's the honest truth for yourself. That is going to help you get out of the spiral of consistently doing and going.
Mm-hmm. I'm personally doing like personal development course right now with a mentor of mine that I've worked on and off with for a few years. And one of the exercises she had us do between the third and the fourth session was to just have this emotional check-in with ourselves 3 to 4 times a day. So like first thing when we wake up, around lunch, mid-afternoon-ish, before bed. And it was such an eye-opening experience to basically show sort of what is your general emotional set point through the day. And knowing that like if these are the predominant emotions you are feeling, like what kind of energy do you think you're giving off then from that? What are we able to call in that moment? And it was so eye-opening, especially because I fortunately got to do my exercise at a time where we had just had a huge natural disaster and like we were away and not in our own space watching like our trees crumble around our house from our friends sending pictures, and came home to no power, and then my kid got sick, and it was just like one thing after another. And it was like, as much as now I need to do the exercise again in a week that's, you know, more steady, this is also motherhood, is like no week is the same. And like, you know, there's these things happen all the time really. But it was really interesting to be able to do that exercise for myself in a time period where life wasn't great and there were problems, and to check in with how am I actually handling the stress of this, and then be able to come out of that on the other side going, okay, now I have some ideas of where I can make some improvements. And now being able to see that and sit down every day and say, okay, I feel that. And I'm also going to allow myself to feel gratitude in this moment for XYZ, and start to shift that belief system and rewiring to not go into that type A control freak anxiety. Like I had to rush home to my house with no power just to see what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
I should have just stayed where I was. Like there was no need for us to come back, but my nervous system was like, that is not an option. My girlfriend was like, stay here. Like you don't have to go home. You have no power. Like we got power, we got food. You can't do anything about your house. Like your trees are falling down. We can't fix that. Just stay here. And I was like, no, I gotta go home. And in that moment, like if I could make a different decision now, that we wouldn't have done that. We would have had a much easier, chill, relaxing time if we just stayed and waited to come back when everything was settled and the mess was still here for us to deal with. We still had to throw all our food out. Like we still had to do all these things, but we stressed about rushing back in that moment. And so I got to see like, how did I handle that? And then now where can I improve in terms of what my predominant response is in those moments? And I see this in my clients so much, who also are like exactly the way you're describing of, I'm doing all the things, Kelsey, like I'm taking all the things and I've done everything you've said and it's still not working. And like, what do I do now? And I can see their faces when my answer is like, well, now we have to just like work on you and this part of things. And I can see when we are our control freak selves, that's not the answer that we want. It's not the answer I want to hear when people say that, when people I'm working with say that to me too. So for women listening who are like, oh, I really identify with that, but like, where do I start? How do we accept that we are control freaking our way through fertility and start to make steps to like loosen the reins a little bit?
Yeah, it just comes back to that radical honesty. Okay. So I mean, everyone can really just easily say I'm a type A,
Right.
like it's almost like a badge of honor because it's gotten you where you
it makes
are
us
today.
Successful and all the things that we thought we wanted when we were 19.
Exactly. And so the harder part, I just had a session yesterday and we got into worthiness. And, I would encourage everyone right now, check into their body, take a big deep breath. And when I say, I am worthy because I am me, how does that feel in your body? And her first thing was like, it feels cheesy. And I was like, yeah, a lot of this stuff feels super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It feels cheesy. It feels icky. So that is your, ego protecting you. Like, don't go there. That's weird. That's what like, ooh, fairies do. And I said, okay, like take another breath. Say it to yourself. Say it out loud. How does it feel? And she's like, I don't believe it. And she was so shocked. And I said, I have never met anyone, including myself, who could say that statement and not truly honest. I don't believe that. Because a lot of what we do is to seek worthiness, is to seek validation, is to seek love, this go, go, go. And so being radically honest with yourself of like, where did this come from?
Right.
And sometimes it's a little bit more obvious, and sometimes it's a little bit harder. You might have to, for me, I had had great parents. My father is dead now, but they were there. They put a roof over our head. We had food on the table. I wasn't abused, but they were both functioning alcoholics. And even though they were around and they took care of us, the emotional needs were never met from infant to really until my late 30s. And that was really hard for me to say out loud because I didn't want to hurt my parents' feelings. I didn't want to be mean. They did the best that they could. My conscious brain was like, but they didn't abuse you. They didn't do this.
Yeah. Could have been worse, right?
It could have been worse, that comparison. And so with a radical honesty, it was just like, well, you're showing up for yourself out of doing, right? So alcohol was a really big one for me because I had functioning alcoholic parents. So that was an easy transition for me. My husband was in the Royal Air Force. That's a big drinking culture. So it just naturally progressed. Yeah. And we were both high functioning. My husband was a fast jet pilot in the Royal Air Force, and, I had my accomplishments. And, stopping alcohol during fertility issues, you do it because you want the baby. When that baby comes, those patterns of why you were reliant on alcohol when you were bored, when you felt uncomfortable, when you got triggered, they're still there. The baby didn't erase them. Yeah. And so after having 2 kids, achieving all the things that I wanted to achieve, I thought I was like, alcohol is easy. I don't need to drink that again. And even though I didn't go as bad as I used to be, I caught myself during COVID and I was just like, my health is going back down. I'm waking up with headaches, and I would like have 1 or 2 glasses of wine. Like I wasn't really drinking. Yeah. And I had to make that radical honesty of like, okay, I have to do this for me. I have to figure out why I'm still doing this. What is the reason? And I've got to go internal and heal that inner child, heal that part of me that is reliant on that. And I did it. And I haven't drank for over 3 years now. And I can be around people and it doesn't trigger me. But you have to get into that why. Why do I feel this way? And really just start having that alone time with yourself. Whether you can journal, whether you can go for a walk and let yourself talk to yourself, because really that's the connection. I really thought, this is really embarrassing to say, I really thought when you started hearing God or your guidance or whatever you want to call it, that it'd be like, Monica, this is God. But it was just like my voice. So I thought I was just like, it was just me talking to me. I didn't realize that it was the higher realms of what I can be tuned into. Yeah. And so once I got over that, I was like, okay, and that is your intuition. That is your higher self. That is your God. Those are your guides, whatever you want to call it. And if you can have those quiet moments with yourself and get out of looping, right? Those made up stories, well, she said this, and you're in these plays, you're in these made up realities. And when you get radically honest and you're like, you catch yourself having that made up conversation, and you have to just boot yourself out again. Like, we don't live here anymore.
Right.
And it's consistency, right? Your consistent action creates your evidence. So it's not being perfect, but if you are willing to consistently show up for yourself every day, either in a small way or a big way, right? Some days you're not going to go to breath work, you're not going to go to yoga, you're not going to do those things, and that's okay. But then you're going to reevaluate, what days can I do those big things for myself? And on the small days, do you just have a small gratitude practice in the morning? That's what got me through my first miscarriage, was just gratitude. I did nothing else. And I can hand on heart say that time was a very happy time for me and my husband, even though we were probably going through the worst thing at that point we had ever experienced together. So it's just the consistency and the honesty. And with the emotions, you got to think of emotions as like the single note in a tune. Okay. They're going to always just keep popping up. They're there as a reminder, as evidence, right? And they're not good or bad. You keep seeing them. The frequency is the music, is the melody. So you can change your emotion and you can be radically honest, but the huge frequency of what you're putting out and what you can bring in, that's where the radical change comes, with really shifting forward, of calming that nervous system and rewiring the neurons, all those things, to then project out what you want to bring in.
Yeah. And I think that belief is probably one of the harder things for our niche to really sink into, right? Because the fertility journey and getting pregnant is such a physical desire. I feel like when we have these conversations, for a lot of people, they're things they've never thought about, talked about, heard about. For me, in my profession, this has been an environment I've been around for a decade, right? And whether or not I've tapped into that part of myself, or whether or not I'm consistent or exploring or what have you, I've always been immersed. I've always had friends, colleagues, podcasts, books, people I've followed that have brought that conversation of the subconscious and how that works into my mind. But I struggle with then having in turn those conversations sometimes with clients, when you can just tell they're looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not why I'm here, but I'm going to sit in this chair and be like, but it's so important. So for friends and clients who are maybe a little bit skeptical of like this entire 40-minute conversation that we've had, how can we help someone that's never heard these things before feel comfortable with like dipping their toe in the pool?
To be honest, it's just, you have to be ready for it. You're going to hear it. It's going to plant a seed in your head. You're going to walk away and say, nope, that's not it. That's not where I am. It's not, you won't get pregnant. I am definitely not saying that. But if that is the root cause, or one of the root causes, you're doing everything perfect physically. Like, I've had a client who worked with the top functional medicine SIBO guy out there, and he could not shift SIBO for her. And it was because she was energetically running these patterns that would not let her shift the SIBO with the things she needed to do in the physical world. So she ran that for over a year, and she hit rock bottom and was like, I can't do it anymore. I'm willing to listen now. And that's how I got here too, right? Like, trust me, if it could have just been diet for me, and in my fertility journey, it was very physical for me, but the emotional and the energetic and the subconscious stuff always catches up to you. And motherhood will push you.
Yeah.
My natural baby is a spit of me, a spit of my father. A lot of my emotional stuff did come from my father. So when I was sat on the floor having everything I ever dreamed of, and I know this sounds really awful and I mean it in the kindest way, I could have punched my kid in the face because his crying was activating my nervous system so much. I consciously knew this wasn't right. I shouldn't
Yeah.
be feeling this way. What do I now need to do? What am I willing to do? And this is where the cheesiness and the weird, like, you know, all that comes into play. The first modality I used was emotional freedom tapping. And
I
the
love that.
energetic shift I got from that was insane, but it was too much for me. I didn't do anything for another year until it got heavy in my chest. Once again, I'm living my dream life. I have everything that I wanted, and I'm doing everything perfect. And I can feel it. It was like 100 pounds on my chest. Okay, go out and get another emotion freedom tapping coach. Did that for a while. And then I got to a point where I didn't have core memories of things that I could tap about. And I got introduced to a modality called Psych K, and that's what I trained in, where you don't have to really realize what's going on. How do you feel? Tell me how you're feeling today. Okay, let's tap in. Let's change that emotion around. Then the frequency stuff came in. So it's just like this layer. And I think it's just you're called to it when you're ready.
Yeah.
And most of the time, people have to hit that rock bottom. They have to just keep going through the same old thing until they're willing to try something completely different. So it's okay that if you're listening to this and you're like, no thanks, right? Apps, I'm not here to scientifically prove anything anymore or like get you on board. I'm just here for the message. And if it resonates, and those are the clients I'm getting now.
Yeah.
They're smart, they're educated, they're doing the diets, they've done the gut health test, they're doing all that, and they feel stuck. Sometimes they're sicker than they were before. And that they're seeking that next level. But you have to be ready for it, because as much as I'm a facilitator, you know, just we are only here as a mirror to help you get through. You have to show up and do the work.
Yeah. Whether
Right?
it's
Just
the
like
physical body or the
Yeah,
emotional body, that's the same regardless,
exactly.
right? You need to do it for yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I've gotten so many great personal nuggets from you, Monica. I'm like already my wheels are spinning of like, how can we introduce these types of things to our clients? So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom, your story with us. And as we wrap up, I always ask our guests just for one last piece of advice for a couple who's listening right now that's on their fertility journey.
Yeah. I want you to be graceful to yourself. I want you to be as proud as you absolutely can be for even showing up and doing these things, because the truth is that there is a cohort of very advanced souls who are looking for those conscious mamas that are willing to do the work before their babies even show up to improve their physical, mental, and emotional health. And the women who are willing to do that for themselves and their babies, I just want you guys to just know that that is you. You are giving your children a gift. As someone who has a 9 and 7 year old in the public school health system, I tell you, I just am so grateful for the time that I had to get my SHIT together, because the amount of food sensitivities, neurodivergency, emotional, mental, it's absolutely out of control. And you showing up for yourself right now, you are massively lowering the risks of your child having to deal with that. And these souls don't want to deal with that. That's why they're waiting for you to get, you know, healthy mentally, emotionally, so that you can give them, you know, a better childhood on so many different levels, and they can then go and just become who they were meant to be, instead of having to spend their 20s and their 30s figuring all this stuff out.
Right. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Monica. Where can our listeners find more about you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say, I want everyone to leave you a review on this podcast. I know you've been doing it for like 4 years.
Yeah, we've had the podcast for 3 years now.
Yeah, there's I was reading your comments and there's one, and this is why I want people to go leave a comment and review, because obviously it helps more women find your podcast. But there's this one comment that was like, she swears too much. I couldn't take her like seriously. I was like, oh my God, do not go listen to my podcast because you would freak out, especially. I was like, oh my gosh. So please go, because you can't respond to comments like that. Like they just get to be there. So I want everyone listening to go do that. You can find me at Finding Fertility everywhere on the internet, but I love podcasting. Podcasting honestly is what got me to where I am. I started my podcast probably 5 years ago now. I think what you're doing is just amazing to get this information out there. So for special podcast listeners, I give them a little insight to what I do for my one-to-one paying clients. And that is a fertility breakthrough session. It's a free 30-minute session that they can get into the energetic stuff. And like you say, when they look at you, 100% of people who show up thinking I'm going to tell them to do diet and this and that, and I call them out on their partner, their past traumas, their IVF traumas. They're like, I didn't think we were going to go there. Right. So I would like to offer that to your listeners. And to get into that, they just have to email me or any social media platform that they're on, DM me with the word dreams, and I will send them the personal link for that.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll make sure all that's in our show notes for you guys as well, so that you can take advantage of that really generous offer. Thank you so much, Monica. This was a wonderful combo. Hopefully we can have it again sometime.
Yes, you're going to have to come on to the Finding Fertility podcast.
Yes, I would love that. We'll get that scheduled when we're done here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.